Ah, fantastic. I love it when the screen notification comes at the top of my screen. Okay, welcome everyone to our event. It's a wonderful chance to see some familiar faces, and I've seen a couple of new people as well on the registration link, so it's lovely to welcome you to our event. My name is Naomi. I will be moderating the next hour and a half with a bit of help from my partner in Geo, Tamara here. You'll also see her on the screen. There'll be a chance for everyone who's speaking. I love the waves, thank you. That for everyone speaking to introduce themselves. But yeah, welcome to our September event. This month we're going to be focusing on the topic of eco-anxiety, or more broadly, mental health in the climate space. I see on the chat a couple of people have introduced themselves already. Please feel free to interact on the chat if you want to say where you're from or ask any questions as we go. That's the place to use it. Also, as a bit of a disclaimer, one more thing to get out the way before we get going. This is recorded, as I said, on Facebook, and we will be uploading a recording onto YouTube later. If you don't want to be in that recording on YouTube, just please feel free to get in contact us via email. Our emails on our website or at the top of our social media channels, if you don't want to be on the YouTube channel. So fantastic. Right, as I said, we're on eco-anxiety this week. We're really excited to be discussing this event because me and Susanna chose it, and we don't think that it's often talked about quite a lot in the climate space, and more broadly, just in the international relations space as a whole. We find that mental health is increasingly getting raised in profile, but especially looking ahead to COP later this year, that was something that we really wanted to bring up as a topic. Thank you for your support for these ongoing events. It's a fantastic chance to be discussing social issues such as this. So, having given you a very, very brief introduction that was a little bit chaotic, I want to hand quickly over to Tamara here. As I said, we're partnering with her organization, Be Well and Green Network this month, as they also focus on mental health and we focused on climate. So we thought it was a wonderful fusion of the two. I will pass over to Tamara now to introduce her NGO a little bit and also to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Naomi. So my name is Tamara Kahudia, based here in Nairobi, Kenya, the founder of Be Well and Green Network, which is a youth-led non-governmental organization based in Kenya. That we are raising awareness on the intersection of climate change and mental health, doing various initiatives. And it is really important for us to continue advocating about eco-anxiety. And I met Naomi when I was a speaker on one of the dialogues. And after this, I really wanted to partner so much on a topic that was focusing on what we are doing. And that's what we are as Be Well, just bringing young people across the world, not only here in Kenya, but we want to raise awareness outside of Kenya and Africa, and having this conversation moving forward to COP and moving to all of events. And so I'm going to introduce our speaker, who's called Jeany Ivy. Jeany Ivy is one of our Be Well members. She's part of we have a campaign that's coming up very soon that's focusing on climate and mental health. And she is part of the team of that campaign. So who we have been working together on just this intersection of climate change and mental health. And this is why she was the best fit to represent Be Well and Green Network. So Jeany Ivy is a counseling psychology student, very passionate about mental health, environmental well-being, and collective healing. And this is where she'll be sharing her insights on eco-anxiety and how it manifests emotionally and psychologically, its impacts on individual communities and the society, and how it is constructive approaches for managing it. This is where Jeany Ivy will highlight coping strategies rooted in resilience, collective action, and self-care. And this is where her goal always is, and that's what drove me so close to her, is how she sparks open conversation, reflective conversation that encourages both awareness and solution. So thank you so much, Jeany Ivy, for just being our speaker representing Be Well and Great Network. So this, I feel it is the moment where Jeany presents herself as well with her slides. Let me share my screen.
Do you want me to have a go at sharing your screen there tomorrow? It's all right.
Okay, can share the screen okay, can share the screen.
Okay. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see it there. A little nod would be fantastic. You never know. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacob. That was amazing. That was exactly the response I was looking for. Okay, Jeany, I'm afraid I've got it on PDF, so just give me a shout when you want me to scroll.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible enough. My name is Jeany Ivy. I am a counseling psychology student, and I'm also part of Be Well and Green Network. Today, I'll be taking us through a dialogue on eco-anxiety. And as we know, this is a growing issue that many people, especially young people, they experience but don't always have the words for. And I'll explain what eco-anxiety is, who it affects, how it shows up in our lives, and how we can cope with it in healthier ways. We can move on to the next slide. Why this topic matters. Why should we even talk about eco-anxiety? Climate change isn't just about the environment. It also affects our feelings, our mental health, and many people usually are worried about the future. And some may feel like the planet might be destroyed when nothing is being done fast enough. And others may feel overwhelmed by some bad news of there's a disaster that has happened, and they may feel stuck or even lose motivation or might give up on what to do next. We talk about this so that we can be able to build hope and resilience. On the next slide, what is eco-anxiety? Eco-anxiety is the ongoing fear or worry about the environment and the future of our planet. For example, maybe there are droughts, floods, or wildfires. You may start to feel nervous about whether the world will be safe again. It's not a mental illness, it's a normal reaction to real problems that we are facing. Feeling worried shows that we actually do care. But when the worry gets heavy, it can affect our health, your sleep, your focus, or even relationships. This is why it's good to understand it and to talk about it. Who is affected? Eco-anxiety can affect anyone, but some groups feel it more strongly. Young people often feel worried about their future, how the world will look like when they grow up. Communities are affected also by climate change, like farmers facing drought or people living near the coastlines. And others may experience floods. We've had a case in Kenya where there was so much rain that there were floods. And we might feel it in our daily lives. Activists who spend most of their time fighting for the environment can feel burnt out when they feel that they have done a lot and nothing is changing. And honestly, everyone feels it in different ways because we all share this planet. How it manifests. Eco-anxiety can show up in different ways, emotionally, physically, or even with our behaviors. Emotionally, people may feel fear, guilt, grief, or even they can be hopeless. For example, you might feel fear or guilt just by using plastic items or maybe driving cars. Physically, eco-anxiety can cause trouble sleeping. You are thinking of how will the future be? How will things go as we grow up? You might be tired, you might be restless by just thinking about the future. And in our behavior, it can go in two ways. Some people might avoid talking about it, about climate change completely, while others might throw themselves actively into activism until they are burnt out. So eco-anxiety isn't just in the mind, it can affect the whole person. Some of the individual impacts. On an individual level, eco-anxiety can lead to anxiety, depression, or even sadness. Some people might lose hope in the future and start asking, why am I bothering to make plans? What will there be? Will we still have another planet to live on? Others struggle to focus on daily life, schoolwork, or even spending time with their friends because they feel weighed down by the thoughts of the environment. It can create a heavy sense of helplessness if it's not well addressed. Fear and worry or sadness about the future is a normal feeling for anyone who might experience eco-anxiety. Some of the collective impacts that we feel as a whole in the society, it's not just individuals. Eco-anxiety affects the community as we are. And when groups feel powerless or powerless to stop climate change, they can have a sense shared of stress. Activists may feel the pressure to always fight, which can cause exhaustion. And sometimes there are conflicts between the older generation and the younger generation, where the young people may feel frustrated that the older generation do not care, while the older generations may feel maybe they're not being heard by the young generation and might get defensive. This is how eco-anxiety can affect relationships and social trust. Some of the constructive approaches with eco-anxiety is there are healthy ways of how we can deal with it by raising awareness, having a connection, taking action, and self-care. By raising awareness, you accept your feelings instead of pushing them down. It's okay to say, yes, I feel worried about the environment. It is very okay to want to help with how things will be in the future. Second, by connection, we share these feelings with other people, talk about it. We tell them how we feel frustrated. They also share how they feel frustrated. Talking about it helps us realize we are not alone and that we are many that are ready to fight for our environment. Instead of just worrying, we can take action. Finding small positive actions could be planting trees, reducing waste, or supporting community projects. Even small steps give a sense of control. And finally, self-care. With everything, as much as we want to take action and connect with other people by raising awareness, we should also remember to not just worry, but we should also remember to trust of what we have done, practice mindfulness, and spending time in nature, caring for ourselves to help us stay strong enough to care for the planet. Some of the practical tips, a few ways to handle anxiety. One can journal, spend time in nature, volunteering in projects, talking to a counselor. Journaling is not just writing your fears and thoughts down, it's also a way to put it down on paper and seeing how you can work on it. Writing down your fears and thoughts about climate can make them feel lighter, and it will be able to help reduce some of the anxiety we might face. Spending time in nature reminds us of why we care and why it helps us feel calm. You might take an afternoon out, go to the forest, stay somewhere near a water body, and just feel the calmness that it comes with. Volunteering, where you join projects like cleanups, tree planting, it gives you a sense of power and purpose. You feel you have accomplished in helping restore the environment. Talking to a counselor or support group, sharing with others helps you feel less alone and more supported. These steps, they may not change the whole world, but they can change how we feel about it, and that is one powerful step to changing the world. As we end, we should always remember that caring for Earth also means caring for ourselves. Our connection with nature is deep. When the Earth suffers, we feel it. And when we take care of the Earth, we also heal parts of ourselves. Eco-anxiety is real, but together, through dialogue and small actions, we can turn it into resilience and hope. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Let me just share my screen now. Okay, amazing. I always love it when you suddenly get jumped back to your main screen. Thank you so much, Jeany, for your presentation. That was unbelievably amazing. I really loved your perspectives. And there are many, I think in case people don't know, I write a summary of these events afterwards. And there are some wonderful, wonderful phrases that you have said on there that I can be taking forward to this summary. And that we can use to change. One of my favorites was we can take steps to change how we feel about the world. And that in turn can change how we address the world with a different outlook, with a different dialogue focus. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your preparation as well. Okay, now we've had our first speaker. We also have our second speaker coming up. And then I saw there's lots of activity in the chat, which is fantastic. I wanted to let people know that once our second speaker, Inés, has spoken, there will be a chance afterwards for the next hour or so to have a dialogue, to have a discussion on some of the points based by both of our speakers and also any ideas that you have had that we've forgotten to include or forgotten to mention. So please keep these thoughts in your head, please keep them there and be ready in after about 10 minutes or so to share them. Let me find you on my screen. Okay, fantastic. I now wanted to introduce Inés, who is our second speaker. Whereas Jeany was speaking from a psychology perspective, we have Inés here speaking from her practical experience. She has worked to lead and found multiple NGOs working on sustainability and change. And she's currently working in the United Nations Youth Office as a young leader on the SDGs. We're really excited to hear her perspectives, and I will let Inés introduce herself in more detail. But thank you very much, and off you go, off you go.
Thank you, Naomi. And that is great to follow with this, with the first presentation, because I feel like you got a lot of insight in like the technical elements also of like what it actually means to have eco-anxiety and so on. And I want to bring the hope also back on like how we can take action on these, which I know was just touched upon at the end of the previous presentation. So let me just try and share my screen so that you can see what I want to share. Hopefully that works for you all. Yes, fantastic. Okay, so as we're talking on eco-anxiety, I know Naomi just presented me briefly, but just to say, I'm someone that's generally very positive, and I wanted to put this with this emoji here. I haven't myself experienced the high level of anxiety that many people have in this space, so I do want to preface with that to say that it is also important to hear from all those who have lived experience in being very anxious or even further like living with depression as a cause of all these issues that we all face. I've been a youth activist for, I would say, the past 10 years. Soon gonna age out of the age of youth, but moved a lot more into storytelling as well in the recent years to share stories that can inspire others to take action. My current role is working with the youth office on the Young Leaders for the SDGs initiative, and I get to interact with so many young people around the world that are tackling these issues, but also that are bringing hope in these topics as well. And maybe the other element that's relevant here is that I've been involved in multiple COP processes, both as part of my government, but also as a young civil society leader in 4 different COPs. And that's probably where I've experienced the most anxiety in these high-level spaces, which aren't necessarily friendly also to young people as well. In terms of my background, I know I'm from Peru, but I have lived in all of these countries that you see on the screen. And so I'm going to try and bring some examples also from that intercultural lens, and making sure that I can share from the experiences I've had in different places. Just as a brief introduction to mental health specifically, I have a colleague at the office that is working on mental health and well-being, not only in terms of the climate crisis, but also just in general. What do we mean when we talk about mental health? And this was already described in the previous presentation, so I won't go too deeply in it, but it's definitely something that's so important for us as young people, especially as 1 in 2 people will develop a mental health disorder in their lifetime. So that's half of humanity. And it is also very costly to all of us. It actually will likely cost us $16 trillion by 2030 to tackle the issue of mental health and anxiety, depression included in that. And specifically, when we're talking about young people, 1 in 7 people aged 10 to 19 live with a mental health condition. 20 to 29 is kind of a peak period of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or substance use. And young people are also they have the 3rd leading cause of death is youth suicide. So this is very tangible for us. And I wanted to start off with this kind of, it's real, it's true. And if anyone here is going through any mental health condition, I wanted to say this: we hear you and we see you, and it's definitely something that a lot of us are working on to make sure that we can tackle this. So maybe to go to some positives now, and the last stat that I didn't talk about is a 73% of global suicide occur in low and middle income countries, and I thought it was important to share this because this is also the people who are struggling the most when it comes to the climate crisis. So I think it is important to talk also from a global South perspective on these issues. Anxiety, I would say, comes from fear, and I loved that in the previous presentation that there was a message that I also wanted to mention here. We have fear because we care, and oftentimes that comes because we feel things deeply. And for me personally, something that has helped me overcome that fear is faith, and it doesn't have to be the same faith for everyone, but the belief in the fact that we are here for a reason, at least for me, has helped me overcome these emotions. If you've not seen this emotions wheel before, you can definitely go to the website, which is linked there, and dive deeper into it. But there are so many emotions we can live through when it comes to climate, and some people can feel disappointed, frustrated, betrayed, but also hopeful, empathetic, overwhelmed, and with anxiety, feeling lonely, etc., etc. So there are so many emotions, and seeing them in this wheel to me helps understand that they're not necessarily separate to each other. They're not things that, okay, you are either frustrated or you are in panic mode or you're hopeful. We can have all these things in conjunction to each other. And it's beautiful also to recognize all these different emotions that we have. Going into my personal experiences of dealing with all these emotions, I would say the first thing is taking action. And I had the chance to be at a COP where we had a campaign called The Missing Majority. We were trying to represent the voices of young people in decision-making spaces that weren't even allowed to be in that space, whether because of visas or because of funding or because of not access to the right accreditation. We were able to deliver these handwritten notes, and the person that you see in the picture at the time was the finance minister of Tuvalu. And this is a country that is likely to disappear due to climate change. So it's something very real to them. And Tuvalu's leaders have actually launched the Future Now project, which looks to establish an island that is completely digital to make sure that their culture is preserved. And as I was sharing the message with him, I'm from Peru, but it's not a country that's necessarily as impacted as his. I found a lot of hope of seeing that all of us are trying to take action on this issue of climate crisis, especially those most affected, and finding ways that we could take action in our own ways. And in this case, it was bringing the messages of young people that couldn't make it to the space was very hope-bringing. And there are so many other young people and people around the world, not only young, also intergenerationally, that are taking action. On this topic of mental health, just to share one, Jeany Ivy Wendo, who I was able to meet last week at the General Assembly in New York, has an app where she is training young people on mental health. She has a digital platform that uses AI to support with mental health services, with different creative therapies like art and storytelling. She's helping those that are displaced by the climate crisis as well, and really building up those leaders through different governance mechanisms. So this is just one example of someone that I met just recently, but there are so many more that to me help curb this issue of climate anxiety, bringing hope through action. The second thing, which is very linked to this, is building a community and finding your support group. And I think the fact that you're all here on this call is already the first step to that. If you've not found the right community, these are your people. They're right here on this call, and they're people that are already interested on these topics. And the picture that I'm showing here is a community that I was able to find when I was based in Sierra Leone, the Fridays for Future community that was there, and just connecting with them, seeing what it was like for all these people living through floods in the country or droughts on the opposite side, making sure that we had a support network. And that's something that I love doing in my role now at the youth office, but I love doing my previous roles as well, was connecting young people to each other, saying like, oh, this is great, you're doing this. Someone else across the world is doing something similar. You guys should connect. So finding community in that support network is definitely very helpful, but also using the tools that are already available to us. So a few months ago, I was invited to join the Future 50 class of the Global Shapers, where we're using tools such as foresights and kind of dreaming towards a better future, where we'll be able to give decision makers our thoughts on how we can move away from doomsday and thinking about what the future look like in a negative lens, and actually bring concrete solutions to decision makers. And specifically in my case, in the topic of Latin America, we're looking into how we can use these tools, especially in rural and indigenous communities, to curb all the issues that they're facing. And this is, of course, not just climate change, but all the other issues that are intersectional to it. So I would say find the tools that can be useful to you. It could be foresight, but it could be other things that allow you to also move the needle in a positive way. And this was also mentioned in the previous presentation in terms of the use of art as a form of expression as well. I just got given this past weekend this book. I haven't yet used it, that's called Climate Courage. And it was developed by the Youth Climate Collaborative. And it's a great way of like using note-taking and journaling and art, and there's like poems in here and stories and concrete examples that help us think beyond all the sad news that we can see, but bringing courage into the conversation and positive news. And maybe as a final focus on the positive, there are many, we use social media a lot, and there are many social media pages that focus on positive news as well. A lot of the times our mainstream news maybe doesn't focus on the positive and on the good things that are happening in the world, which can increase anxiety for all of us. So I just wanted to share two of them, which I have come across in the past, one in Arabic and one in Spanish. So I wanted to do that because I'm conscious there's always a lot of content in English, so I'm sure it's not as hard to find. But there, young people have created their own mediums and have a large following. One called The Good News, where she's sharing a lot of good news, especially for the MENA region. And then Eco News, which was created by an Argentinian who, again, is trying to shift the narrative and make sure that people get the positive news as well that can encourage us all to keep taking action. Because I think the worst thing that can happen is if our anxiety grows to a state where it paralyzes us, then things will get worse, right? So trying to make that fact that we care so much translate into action, I think is essential. I think I was just 1 minute over, but hopefully that was helpful to bring some hope into the conversation as well. Thanks so much.
That was wonderful. 1 minute was not a problem, Inés, at all. Thank you so much for your time. I was in the background, same as before. I was writing a couple of notes, and a series of things really came out for me. And the most important thing was balance. We think so much about the negatives and what we could do better in these spaces. Both, you're right, as people who are something that came out of both of these presentations was both as someone who is experiencing threats from climate, but also those of us who are in the activist space or in the working space of climate, and that we need to balance all that negativity that we are trying to problem solve in our work with the positives that actually our approaches and our work are doing something. And you're right, we often face an issue, find a solution for it, and then move on really quickly. And I think we need to take a minute to sort of appreciate that action that we've done, those connections that we've made, that belief that we've solidified before we continue on and keep working. And I think that was something that really came out of your presentation, Inés, and that was something I absolutely loved. So thank you everyone for indulging me with a minute of my chatting. But I've loved both of our speakers today, and I think they've complemented, I'm sure you all would agree, they've complemented each other so much. So thank you both for taking the time to both prepare something and join our call today and meet with us all. We are now shifting on to the dialogue part of this discussion. I say that like there's going to be some magical shift. There's nothing. But we're going to have a lovely time giving you all guys a chance to share your experiences, your thoughts. I have a couple of, I've given my thoughts, but I have a couple of questions for our speakers if there's no one immediate. But normally what we do, and this works quite well, is if you can put up your hand using the reactions on Zoom, and you can share your thoughts. We've had a couple of things in the chat as well, so I'll just give anyone a minute who wants to put their hand up and give either a question to our speakers or an experience or something that they can relate to, or even a criticism. Sometimes a bit of debate is interesting in these events. I love it, the silence after someone asks people to speak. Thank you, Lucy. That's amazing. That's amazing. Off you go. Go ahead, say your thoughts.
Thank you so much. I think for me, that was quite an insightful session, just listening to Jeany and the other lady. And just, I mean, at times, I'm a politician, to say, and an activist based in Kenya. So I know I just listened to them and I could feel those are some of the things that actually we are facing as women. I'm not actually young, but even these, I mean, these are things that affect all of us. And just being in this space and listening on how we need to cope with this is very important. And like she said, this is a safe space where we talk about it. And one of the things I think I've liked about it is it's a place we can talk about our things. And I think it's something henceforth that can also join in many others, not just here, but people just get the encouragement. And I also want to encourage everyone. This is very important. Don't feel shy talking about your challenges. We all feel very bumped into many things in this world that are coming up on our family issues, climate including. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That was amazing. And it's really nice to hear from our audience also that they enjoyed these events. I think we come here and I have a lovely time discussing. And it's really nice to know that the other 32 people in the room are enjoying the discussion as well. Is there anyone else who would like to contribute, who would like to say something? I'm having a look through the chat as well. Tamara, go ahead.
Thank you so much for our two amazing speakers. I've been really touched a lot, especially as a person who has undergone depression and PTSD, and just going through my journey with mental health and being a climate activist since the age of 13 years old. And listening to your stories and just the learning has really inspired me a lot. I'm carrying something home. I'm getting to learn something new, getting to handle my emotions. And through my experience, now this is now sharing my experience, but through my experience with mental health, and my support from my family, especially in Africa, there's so much stigmatization on mental health. But just being a climate activist, navigating through mental health, having a community, and something that I've really loved about the climate movement is having a community where we can have this amazing safe space, share our feelings, encourage each other. I know Inez during COPs is the most hectic time. The anxiety levels are up. I remember there's a time my anxiety was so high that I could not even move from the bed that I was sleeping because of the anxiety that I have. I felt like I didn't achieve so much. It was during like the New York Climate Week. I felt like my head was paining, my feet was paining. I did not achieve my goals. I felt like somewhat of a loser. But then I got this space and started Be Well and Grey Network for other young people to feel like there is a space for you to be a mental health champion, for you to feel a space of love and community. And this is something that I really love for the Zoom call that we have had today, just sharing these thoughts on eco anxiety and just coming up with new initiatives, collaborations on working on something on this because as even as a psychologist, there's so much not learned about eco-anxiety, such a new terminology. People are trying to look around it to get to understand it. And so there's so much research that's happening about it. But this space is just a beginning of each one of us taking a step to realize more about climate and mental health. And it makes me so happy. Yes.
I completely agree. This was one of the intentions of both this Dialogue On series, but also particularly picking this particular topic was we felt at ODIF that the mental health space, especially talking about success, you're right, talking about what we mean by achievement in these high level discussions is kind of there, but it's not really spoken about and it's not mentioned and it's not confronted directly. And I think something you said also tomorrow is really helpful is that learning really helps. I know that when I first reached out to Tamara for this event, and when she was chatting to me, she sent me a couple of articles, and it's not a topic I am particularly knowledgeable or expert on. I am now after this discussion, but just learning a little bit more about it really helped me and made it possible to reach out to other people who are in that mental health and climate change intersection. I wonder if maybe, Inez, if you have any things that have helped you in COPs or in even high level discussions. We've mentioned a couple of things, like just taking a minute and focusing on action, but I wonder if you could share a little bit more about your experiences on that.
Yes, for sure. I was nodding vigorously as Samara was talking because it's true that during those weeks, one can feel so lost. So, for context, the first time I went to a COP, I just reached out to my government and I was like, "Hey, if you need help, I'm happy to help you." And the COP had been moved from Chile to Spain, and I was living in France, and I self-costed it. So it was like, "Yes, I can help you," but they weren't going to fund me, and I still thought it was an important topic to be engaged in. So I went, and they were like, "Okay, follow the topic of deforestation, write notes." And I was like, "Okay, like in what room, with who, like for what?" And there were all these questions in my mind, and I didn't know mechanisms such as Youngo existed for young people. I didn't know that my badge held more weight because I was with the government than a civil society, and so I had access to more rooms. I knew nothing. I just wanted to help. And I think those 2 weeks were very overwhelming because I was just running around trying to do the right thing, but not really accompanied to do so. So I would say definitely if people want to engage in multilateral spaces, learning what mechanisms exist. So for COP, there is Youngo for young people, but there's also other civil society organizations that engage in that space. space for spaces like the General Assembly that was just last week in New York. There's a major group for children and youth for young people, but then there's also the other civil society or mechanisms for like there's the women's, there's the indigenous peoples, like there's different mechanisms that can help give you that support. And then what I've tried to do as I've engaged in the future is every time I learn something new, I just add it to a document. And then whenever I'm sending young people to a space, they have like the back end experience of what it was like for me. So hopefully we're building that knowledge together. And I'm sure so many of those documents already exist. It's just they're not necessarily known, right? So as you were saying, Naomi, for someone just share that information to someone, share that article, share that website that you know works and helped you. And honestly, just talking to other people who are in this space. Don't feel like you can't reach out to someone. So I've had people DM me on Instagram saying like, "Hey, I'll be at this space. Do you know how I can get into this event?" And most of the time, people might be busy, but they'll still want to help because they'll remember the first time they engaged and how stressful and overwhelming it was. And I would say it's a lot about network building. And for me, over the different four COPs that I've engaged in, every time somehow it becomes more overwhelming because you know more people and then you know more events are happening, but at the same time you also know how to deal with them, and you also can share those opportunities with others. So I don't think there's a one size fits all, but definitely there are mechanisms already in place. There are people that have already been in this space. So let's build the knowledge with those people as opposed to try and go at it alone, which is much more stressful and overwhelming.
I agree completely. Susanna will laugh when the first time I went to SB, to Bonn, and that she had to absolutely scoop me up on the very first day because I walked into the far past the security entrance and I was like, ah, and I'd barely got a hand of the website and like the program and even small admin things. You're right, like that. You're right. It really helps to reach out to people on the topic. You're right. Youngo is a fantastic resource for young people. Also, if people are ever in that situation, you please feel free to reach out to us at ODIF because our network with things like these DialogueON, but also our climate project. We will probably know someone who's there who can give you a helping hand or have a coffee or say hi. So if in the future, if you're ever in that space later this year, please reach out. And it's all about that network, that not networking in the traditional sense, but networking in creating a support community, not just a professional community. Victor, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Naomi. I hope can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, my name is Victor. I'm from Kenya, and I'm a conservationist and a member of the local Green Party. I'm pleased to join this conversation, and I think it's a very important series of dialogue. I think this area has not adequately been tackled, and normally we have it's good to address some of the intersectionalities that arises from climate change and mental health. I have interacted greatly with rural communities, and most of them are at the front line of the challenges of climate change. So some of their issues and stresses would be like droughts, how to deal with erratic rainfall patterns, and how to to ensure that they have livelihoods and support their communities. So I think it's an important dialogue, and it's something that we need also to strengthen at local communities and turn communities more into warriors than warring. So thank you very much. It's good to be part of this dialogue. Thank you.
It's a wonderful opportunity to have you. Thank you for being here. I like that catchphrase. Rather than warriors, let's be warriors. For me, that's how they sound very similar. So I had to be very careful with my words there. But it's a wonderful catchphrase, and somehow the similarity between the two words mean it's so easy to confuse the two. It's so easy to become a warrior rather than a warrior, and to intermix them. And I liked something else you raised. It was that we need to strengthen our relationships at multiple levels. You mentioned local, we've mentioned high-level COPs, we've mentioned events like this online. Having that flexibility and having that network across a range of different mechanisms and mediums is a fantastic skill that, well done, congratulations everyone here, you now have, but also that we can all practice. I've seen a couple of things in the chat as well. Julia shared something amazing on the topic of art as a creative. I'm just going to read it out now in case people have missed it, but that creativity is a great tool for self-expression, and that art can be a way to channel heavy feelings and emotions around the climate situation, performance poetry, for example. And you mentioned something also about having movements and having focuses. I think Inez, you raised a similar thing, and as did you, Jeany, on yours. These actions as a collective can really help us find other people who are relating to the same problems and the same concerns. I've spoken so much at these events, so please someone interrupt me and share your thoughts. Is there anyone else who wants to bring something to this discussion? Maybe you have your own experience, maybe you attended a COP, maybe you attended your own local event, maybe you just care about how other people feel around you and want to share something on that. If not, I'm also having a look back through the chat. I love sometimes when I'm talking, people say so much stuff on wonderful things on the chat and I miss it. Jacob, I see a comment from you that people often say that eyes are the gateway to the soul, but ears are the true gateway. I loved that comment. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was a TikTok that I saw. But no, I was, and thank you for giving me the space. It's great to be here with everyone. And yeah, thinking about when the comment about the news was brought up, and you know, there's always, like, at least here in the United States, you have a positive story at like the last 5 minutes, but the rest is, uh, it's tough. And it seems like it's getting tougher each day. And so, like, if that's the consistent messaging that's, going into your ears every day, multiple times a day, like, that's shaping your environment. And so, I can use my parents as an example. It's like, sometimes, that can be like not that they want to be in that space, but, like, talking about things that, raise anxiety levels, or things that are, happening that are really out of their control. But it's that's the messaging that they get every day, watching the evening news and listening to the radio. And I think that it's spaces like this, and the work and the conversations that we're having here. It's like that is what should be embraced and be sought after, because I think that it's communities like this that are really committed to the long game, as I call it. And I think that the work that we have ahead of us, we have to do it together. And so I was putting in the chat, and I'll add this, but just thinking of the organization that I support is like acting as like a backbone organization and a convener, where organizations, focused on climate and mental health can come together and design collaborative programs, embracing things like collective impact, shared values, and us being as, that pure, that complementary force. But yeah, I think it's really, important to make sure that your environment is one of as much positivity as possible, because there's a lot of tough things happening in the world. And but no, it's great to hear all these stories. Very uplifting.
I agree completely. I often think the news should be renamed bad news sometimes because we don't see good news as often. That's often what comes to my brain. I think if I open one of my news apps, or if I see a newspaper or in a public space and I go, why doesn't it say bad news at the top? I don't get my mum sending me things that are funny. That's not what comes through on my news channels. I loved one of the points you raised that was to do with your parents. I really liked that, and it actually linked something to do with what Jeany said earlier about an intergenerational issue and trying to find the language to talk about this kind of thing. I wonder, Jeany, if you had anything that you could use to bounce off that point.
Pardon, just pardon a little bit.
No problem at all. I was just saying there was some similarities with what you talked about and what Jacob just mentioned to do with a generational divide. I think from my notes you said something to do with caring versus defensive with parents versus younger people. and that sometimes we don't have a language to talk about eco-anxiety as much as we're talking about educating and knowledge building. So maybe you could just expand a little bit on that point that you mentioned.
Yeah. When I talked about the feeling that the older generation, they feel like the young generation are attacking them when they say that we are trying to do our best, and it's like the older generation just don't care. But majority of the time, with the way that things are changing, their voices were loud, and with new innovations, the younger people have a better way of addressing some of those issues that are brought up. And with both generations, our sounds, our voices are loud together. I think breaching the gap of how we communicate with each other is one other area that is sorry, I just got disconnected. I was saying bridging our voices together with the older generation and the younger generation will create change.
Yes, completely. And it links back to that point that I feel like is coming out as a message of this event, that we have to build a community, we have to build a network, and we have to include everyone in that. So you raise the point of age, but there's also the point of either culture or geography, in that different communities have different understandings of anxiety and different understandings and openness and willingness to discuss mental health. And that's something I think that can also challenge international spaces such as COP, is that it's not always something that is if you meet someone, it's not the first thing you're always going to mention. I say this, I live in the UK. I know that British people are notorious for not sharing our emotions. And that's the stereotype. And I think it does follow as well. So this is something that we have to contend with when we're fighting this. I wouldn't say it's a negative, but it's certainly a challenge. Maybe does anyone else have any thoughts on some of the challenges? We've talked about positive, and I want to keep it positive, but maybe we can acknowledge the challenges of talking about eco-anxiety and some of the things that are in our way and maybe how we can overcome them. Both of our speakers, you're welcome to contribute as well.
I can jump in. I was just thinking a lot of the narrative of mental health is still very global north focused. And so when we talk about mental health, even in terms of the words we use, the concepts people build, they still come with a colonialist background and a sense of like, oh, maybe we need to help these people. Who are these people and why do they need help? And shouldn't they be the ones telling us what it is? And so I think a lot of that narrative building locally is essential so that we can tackle mental health in its diversity and also in making it something that's empowering and not top down and or north south or however you want to say it, but really focusing on the language I think is important. And there are many people that are working on these topics. They just maybe don't have the visibility or don't feel the need to impose their views on others, but somehow we should elevate those voices as well.
I love that contribution. Thank you. I like your point on visibility. And yes, local narrative building. I think that's one of the wonderful things about having this online event is I know we're limited to those who can access the internet and freely join technology. But I also think one of the values is, for me, it's 6:30 in my afternoon. We're able to get people from all across the globe who are willing to stay up or wake up early, depending on what time we have this event. And that then we can have all of these different perspectives here to create a really intersectional and complete understanding of mental health. And that's what I really like. So thank you so much for that contribution. I saw an interesting comment in the chat just most recently that's from Cameroon, and it talked about eco-anxiety is deeply tied to survival. I wonder if that person, where is it? Sorry, I need to find your name. Prisca Chuan, I wonder if you're willing to contribute a little bit more to that. If you don't want to speak, I understand. I'm asking you on the spot. That's completely okay. I sometimes think it's nice to call people out and sometimes ask them if they're willing to share because it's always nice. Sometimes it's really intimidating to speak on these events. So I appreciate everyone who has contributed so far. Another really interesting comment that I found from the chat was from Lucy, and she mentioned the point of technology, which was also something I just thought about. And again, drawing back to that idea that more information and knowledge is available, which then in turn makes it more open to discuss. And so I love that point on mental health, and I love to see the progress that we're making within that topic. Does anyone else want to contribute? Maybe I can do this as like almost my final call if anyone else wants to say something on this topic. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Maybe just to finish off this dialogue section. That's all right. Don't worry. Maybe just finishing off this dialogue section, I can turn to both of our speakers and get kind of their final comments. Maybe it's something that they've learned from the dialogue. Maybe it's something that has stood out to them or something that they didn't get to mention. I know you've both already spoken so much already. I really appreciate it. But maybe if you give me a one-liner, your take-home message, I would really appreciate that. I can turn to Jeany first.
Yes, from what I've taken home is that we might not all have experienced eco-anxiety, but we have different stories and experiences on mental health and also being activists with the climate area. And it has really opened my eyes on how it is not really talked out a lot, and that we might try to bring our voices, but it just isn't one person. We can do it as it takes a lot. It takes all of us. It takes time. It takes much research and also determination. And I am really glad to be in this network right now. I thank Tamara for that, and also Open Dialogue. I have really learned also on how climate it also brings us in the aspect of also mental health. It's not just mental health alone, also climate change. Every topic is together, and it's somehow just how can I put this? It's joined in other topics. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Yes, I agree with you. Something that's come out is this topic on mental health intersects with so many spaces. And so maybe we should have a series on mental health. We've done it on climate today. Maybe we should continue the series. I will always keep that in the back of my mind as an idea for our dialogues on. Thank you so much. Inés, maybe I can come to you next.
Of course. Well, I think one of the things that a lot of people mentioned was community and like cross collaboration and sharing. So this is a great place to start with this group as well. But I noticed we all talked a little bit also on art, and we haven't necessarily done that throughout this call. So I wanted to read a poem, if you'd allow me, from this book that I was given just 2 days ago. And hopefully it will bring some hope into the conversation. It's not mine, but I will read it off this book, and I can share the link on where you can find it as well. It says, "This time I arrive as the soundless music of future, being played by a million violins. In the mud and dirt, away from the glamour. We have been deaf to the march of the birth of a future, conceived by the sweat of blood, of those whose toil little do we hear of. Dancing the dance of death, we forget that the music of the future is ebbing in the Philippines and flowing all the way to Congo. Listen closely. Do you hear the music of future? It's the sound of your blood rushing like a teenager's in your veins. It's the sound of silence when the gloomy winter percolates. It's the beat that we are marching to from Africa to Asia amidst the glaring figures. There's a mystical beckoning from the souls that have inhabited this place for a million years. There'll be a future. Just toil, my child, just toil, my child. The sound of the future is the laugh of our grandchildren. It's the sound of your blood running the course of a century and more. Listen to it closer. It will guide you further and farther. Listen to its call for a revolution.
I feel sad that I have to end the meeting with more chatting and that we can't end on that note. So thank you so much for reading aloud. I'm really hoping that I can call on our speakers, and also if anyone else has mentioned any material. I know Jacob, for example, you have. Please email us. I will add our email at ODIF in the group chat now. But please, can you share the material that you have introduced or given us? Maybe in such as the link to that book would be fantastic. Thank you so much. I see it already. Thank you. And then I can distribute that more widely to the emails of everyone else who has joined this meeting, and you can all draw upon that material if you wish. Maybe tomorrow I can finish with you if you want to maybe share your thoughts.
My thoughts for today is that I'm happy. I feel I'm just full of happiness that we are making a step to having conversations on climate and the intersection of mental health. Especially here in Africa, we have fewer conversation on that. I know every time I'm just trying to mention here in Africa, but that's the reality. There's a lot of stigmatization on mental health. I have experienced mental health. I have been a victim and I have faced stigmatization. And this is why Be Well continues to empower other young people and the community in general, everyone in the society, to advocate more on mental health. This is just the beginning on the conversations on mental health. We want to continue collaborating with everyone on discussions on climate and mental health, even here in Kenya, for those who might be in Kenya on the 9th of October, or who are in Nairobi. On the 9th of October, we're also having a World Mental Health Day event where we're having discussions on mental health, on climate, having our bodies, having creative of arts, where we're having wellness bingo for people to be able to connect with each other and starting that gap in conversation. And we're also even launching a campaign and where we also hope to collaborate with Open Dialogue Society, and where we're even writing an article together. And our campaign is just raising awareness called Healing Minds, Healing Earth campaign that will be out from 3 weeks from now. That we want to start a global movement with everyone to feel like the climate crisis, because a lot of people are experiencing climate crisis, not only us as young people, not the society in general. We have to remember vulnerable communities are experiencing this. This is something that I have dealt with, of people I have talked to, marginalized women who have really emphasized on how they have been affected mentally, but they don't understand that conversation that we are having. It's a discussion on mental health. But when we have this conversation and making it loud and say, yes, this topic is mental health, not hiding the fact that we're talking about mental health. And that is something that happens in so many discussions. So I'm so happy today to have this session that has sparked the light to talk about mental health, and I can't wait for every single each of us to collaborate, to continue to have these webinars, having these sessions, having hubs and circles that are talking about this. And this is what I'm taking home. I've loved the poem, really touched me a lot. There are people who don't believe in meditation. I do believe in meditation, and for my years that I've experienced with mental health, meditation, journaling, being able to manage my anxiety has enabled me to be the person that I am today. So for everyone, a key message that I will send is try to find your coping strategy to maintain your anxiety. And if you don't have an anxiety, any mental health disorder, I'm a psychologist, I understand it, and I'm just sharing so much love and hopefulness and wishing everyone such an amazing time. So yes.
Thank you so much for your lovely messages, Tamara. I will echo everything you've said. Thank you so much for working with me and helping me to organize this event as well. I want to pass on a massive thank you to Tamara in particular, but also to both of our speakers, Inés and Jeany, for taking the time, as I've said, to share their thoughts, to prepare for this event, and for just bringing their experiences to the table. It really makes a difference to have people who care and can bring such a lovely energy to also the space and to this discussion. So thank you very much. I want to also say a thank you to everyone who's joined on this meeting. Same as our speakers, you've all taken an hour and 10 minutes out of your day to listen to me and everyone else chat on about something that we're fascinated by and passionate about. And so all of this contributions on the chat and in person out loud have made the dialogue so engaging and so participatory and inclusive. So thank you very much. I want to end on a couple of reminders. Please check out our website and our work. We run these DialogueON events monthly, and each month we're looking for topics. I have one in mind already related to this topic in some senses, to do with success and what we mean by that. So as a little sneak preview, we would love to have the same audience as we've had today there, because I think some of this discussion translates very well over. We also have our ODCC on climate, which is our project focused specifically on climate resilience in our local team organizations, and that is part of our community. So I've sent a link to our mailing list, which can allow you all to connect in that way. And as I said, all of our updates will be on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and also by email through our mailing list. So please keep updated on how that's happening. I will reach out to everyone after with this event, probably tomorrow or the day after, with a massive thank you again, and also with your certificates for attending, because I think it's really nice to have a recognition that you've taken this time out to spend. Along with that certificate, I know this is sounding like a list, I promise you it's not. Along with that certificate, I will also be sending around a feedback form for that, even if you take just 2 seconds. I know you hear this very regularly in your life, but even if you just take 2 seconds to reply, that can help us suggest new events. As you've seen with Tamara, she was our speaker earlier this year in the spring, and so it's wonderful to keep the networking going that we've made with these people. So if anyone is interested in collaborating, or if you have a topic that you want to hear that we haven't covered, please suggest that. It's wonderful to have these ideas. On that note, I have nothing else to say. This has been a wonderful hour full of inspiration and positivity, but also full of some realism and some pragmatism. And I think we've all had a fantastic time sharing on a topic that needs this amount of discussion, and if not more, but definitely this amount for an hour and 15. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon, evening, rest of your day, wherever it is for you. And I hope you can keep some of this positivity and some of that poem that Inés read throughout the rest of your week. Thank you very much, and see you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a lovely
Bye.
week.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.